Welcome to E Squared, Empowerment Through Connection. Empowerment with Elysia. Oh my gosh, we've been laughing so much that I'm like messing up my own intro. This is hilarious. I'm here for it. Today we are streaming through Global Equine and Equestrian Coaching on Facebook. And tonight I have the great pleasure of finally getting to connect with Tori Jeffress, located in New South Wales. Tori is, she does all sorts of cool stuff. She actually does classical dressage. She trains horses. She helps people to have a better understanding of how their thoughts and their emotions impact their horses, and also how the balance or imbalance in their own bodies impacts their horses when they're working them biomechanically. And so we are going to talk a little bit about how you integrate classical dressage, spinal alignment, and the biomechanics so that your horse can have the best experience possible, as well as yourself. And Tori will share some of her own personal journey. Disclaimer, we are having some interesting technological issues. So you may see some pixelation in Tori's screen. You are not on acid. We are just having a fun time with things. So the joke is that, we couldn't actually get a hold of Tori today. So her avatar is just phoning it in for us from the Matrix. So we're gonna have lots of fun today, from having serious conversation with horses to just joking silliness. So I hope you're up for this fun ride. Tori, thank you so much for finally joining us after almost a year of playing, going back and forth, trying to find timing from New South Wales, Australia.
Thank you for having me. Hi, guys.
You are so welcome. So Tori, you've been working with horses. You got to have your first little pony when you were 2 years old. You're now 28. Tell us a little bit about your journey.
Yeah. So I got my first pony when I was 2. It was always Mum's dream to ride when she was younger. And then when she had me, because she didn't get a horse when she was young, she actually used to tell me, like, she had an orphanage next door when she grew up, and she used to jump the fence and go ride the orphanage kids' horses. So yeah, when I was 2, we moved out to a property and she bought me a little pony, and I hated it. Like, there is no way I wanted to ride. And when I was 7, we moved to Manildra, the farm we're at now. And my mum thought, Tori hasn't ridden since she was 2. We should probably sell that pony. So Mum sold my pony, and then she was the worst person ever. And from that moment on, I wanted to ride. But it took a fair bit of convincing after that. Obviously, I had wanted to ride for 5 years, so why would I want to ride now?
Sure.
I from then on actually started getting really interested in reading heaps of horse books. And Mum's friend Dan Simmons, he's actually the one that got me back into horses again. He used to drag me around to Pony Club, and he was great, him and his daughter Darcy. But we had this funny little thing growing up. So my ponies always come from Brewarrina, which is like way out west here. And Dan would just go out there and just choose a pony out of about 50 in the paddock and bring it home and hope for the best. And if the pony didn't work for me, if I got bucked off too many times or something, he'd just give it to his daughter Darcy. So poor Darcy, she got thrown off all the time. I just had to get back on because I didn't ride the pony, she'd have to. And they'd give me the better ones. I went from that to then when I was 12, I started open level eventing. I jumped for quite a while, and then when I was 16, I left school to work for Nat Blundell. I spent 2 years with Nat. We went overseas. I groomed for her overseas because she wanted to get to the Olympics at London.
Super cool.
It was cool, and I evented with her for a couple of years, but I had a rotational fall over a jump, and I'm way too chicken after that to jump again, so I started doing more dressage stuff. And that's when I got Rocco, when I was 18. So I've had him for 10 years now. And it wasn't long after I got him, I actually started having soundness issues with him. And that's where the classical dressage journey started.
Beautiful. So when you noticed that Rocco was having soundness issues, were you like, classical dressage? That sounds like a great idea to solve my horse's soundness problems.
It's actually not really how it happened. I thought it was his saddle, and then I thought it was this, and then I thought maybe it was what I was feeding him. I went through a heap of different things, and he went to the vet. That horse has been to the vet that much, wow. And in the end, what actually happened was there was this horse that came up for sale on Horse Zone. His name was Peaceful Warrior, and there was no way I could afford him. But I thought, I wonder, if the people that own this horse would let me just go out and have a lesson on him, because he was Grand Prix trained, and I was like, that'd be so cool, So it was Faye and Jose Mendez that actually owned or had the horse in training, and I went out and had a lesson with Jose, who is a classical dressage trainer. And he's the one that actually changed everything for me. Like, he changed my outlook on dressage, and that's where the classical stuff started coming in. I told him about Rocco, and he actually said to me, he's like, I think I might know what's wrong with that horse. And I was like, oh yeah. And he goes, I think what's wrong with that horse is you. And I kind of went, oh, okay. Yeah, okay. And he said, oh, it's not you, per se, it's actually how you're training him. So yeah, I started taking Rocco to him and learning more about classical dressage and, the benefits it has for the horse's body. And Rocco slowly started becoming more and more sound. And then I actually went from training with Jose to then training with Belinda Bolzenbroek. And it's only just recently, so I've had Rocco, I can't remember now what year it was I started training with Jose, but it's been a very long time, that I've been doing the Bridleless and the classical stuff with him, and I've just recently decided to retire him. More so probably because I want to start doing more demos and things now, and he's not old, but I just feel like with all the energy he had in his body from when he was young, even though I've been able to, really help him along and make him feel good and sound, but I just don't want to push him past where he is at the moment. So I've actually started working with a couple of other young Andalusians. But the classical dressage so the theory behind it, I guess, is that horses actually aren't designed for us to ride them. So I think it's our job to make them, build their muscles in such a way that they're strong enough to carry us throughout their lives, well into their 20s. And I guess when I start teaching people, the first thing I talk about is spinal alignment. So a horse has 7 vertebrae in their neck, and they've got 47 along their back and in their tail. And I like to think of these vertebrae like carriages on a train track. So when a train goes around a corner, it can turn around a nice smooth corner that's kind of like this. But what happens a lot is, and you've probably felt it, riding yourself, you go to turn your horse, and you sort of turn them left and they're going off over to the right there. So when you feel that, you lose that alignment. If there were carriages on the train track, those vertebrae, then they would have just derailed.
Right.
Yeah. And then you can have a horse that either travels hollow or over the back. So a horse that travels hollow, what that actually is it's using its muscles underneath its neck, underneath its belly. And a horse that travels over the back is using the muscles, on top of its neck and on top of its back, which is what we want. So those vertebrae that I just talked about, they should have space between them along their back. And when they're working over the back, they do have spaces between them. But when they're working hollow, what actually happens is the spaces between the vertebrae get smaller, or they can even start touching together, and they end up with things like kissing spine.
Yeah.
Suppose it's you going around, if you were to go like that with your head and put it right back and bend your back, it becomes quite painful. And if you have a horse that's traveling like that, and then you factor in the fact that you've just put, a person on top of that body that's already traveling hollow, over time, a horse that travels like that is going to put, a lot of pressure on not only their spine and stuff, but also their joints and legs further down.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just thinking.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. It's crazy sometimes when I've driven across the country so many times, 9 times, and sometimes I go through these rural areas and I see horses with such severe sway back that it literally looks like a U. It's just, it's crazy. So it's just, I feel like having horses started too young and trained improperly, and oftentimes with too much weight, just causing that sort of dysfunction over time.
Yeah, and they say too, a horse's skeleton isn't actually fully developed till it's 6 years old. Which when I first started with Rocco, and I think that's too why his career has, been a little bit shorter, because he was started when he was 2.5, and he wasn't he was worked really hard, and that's my fault too. I didn't know any better, I guess, and journey with him has been, teaching me this classical dressage. And I always say now, I'm if only I had have known now what I knew when I first got him, he would be going well into his 20s and so forth. Yeah, but no, it's been a hell of a journey, but it's been a really good one. And there's actually photos which I'll get you to post later of Rocco, there's one photo of him when I first started the in-hand stuff with him. So the classical work you don't have to do always on them, like you can do it in hand as well. So everything that I do on them, all the dressage movements, like your shoulder ins, your traverse, your half pass, pirouettes, and then later on piaffe and that, you can teach that in hand as well. And it's actually, I find, probably easier for a horse that is more unmuscled to teach in hand first, because they're not trying to balance you on their back as well as themselves. So there is, what I was saying before, a photo of Rocco before I started the in-hand work, and then there's one actually, I think it's like 6 to 8 weeks later, and you can see his muscle development has like completely changed. He's really built up over his back and his neck.
That'll be fun to get to look at later.
Yeah.
And we did talk, we laughed a lot beforehand. We were on for like 20 minutes just laughing and carrying on. But one of the things that we had touched on is that ignorance is not, it doesn't mean that you're an idiot. Because we're all ignorant about something in life. Ignorance means that you don't know. And so I think that that's really important for us to be able to try and take the ego and out of things and the expectation to know everything, to do everything perfect, and there's so much information out there, right? And so to be able to just have that learner's mind and just honor that we don't know what we don't know, and to be able to like listen to people from various aspects of different industries and see what makes sense, you know, do the research, listen to your intuition as a rider, and adapt and pay attention to what works for your horse. Because just like with people, some things work better for one person than another. The same thing goes for horses, you know, they're structurally set up slightly different depending upon the breed. And some breeds are better for different styles of riding and movement, and just honoring that.
Yeah, no, that's exactly it. And I think too, like where the classical dressage and the bitless and bridleless actually fit together for me is that when you build a horse's muscles in such a way that they're strong enough, so the idea is actually to get them strong enough so that they can hold themselves together. You know, the horses you get on, like they feel like a freight train, like you're constantly trying to keep them in balance and help them out. So it's to muscle them in such a way that you actually don't have that anymore, that they can balance themselves and keep like a steady rhythm and that sort of thing. And when you have that, I feel like, you know, you don't really need the bridle. If they're listening to your voice aids, your seat aids, they can balance themselves, then the bridle's just there, you know.
Right.
So that's where I transitioned. I went, well, you know, like if you have a horse that's well balanced, then you should be able to do it without a bridle too. And that's where I started working with the bridle stuff and playing around with that more and challenging myself, because whenever my alignment's out, like if I sit a little bit to the left or a little bit to the right, or Rocco will completely, you know, wobble around himself as well, and I don't have the bridle to kind of go, I'm going to fix myself so that I can fix him. And I didn't realize before how much my body actually affects him until I started riding in bridleless. So I think, you know, when I ride like a potato, my horse goes like a potato. When I sit up and actually ride straight, the horse starts traveling in alignment.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. I feel like, what was it like the first time you got on your horse and you didn't have the bridle on?
Yeah, so I actually transitioned it slowly. So I rode him with a headstall and the neck rope to start with together, and sort of taught him, because it's a completely different pressure, you know, like I'd ask with the neck rope. And what happened a lot to start with is he'd just like bugger off over where he wanted to go. So I'd have to reinforce, you know, with the headstall and the reins, hey, you know, I actually want you to go this way, buddy. And over time, he'd listen more and more to the neck rope pressure as he understood it. So I guess by the time I actually took the headstall off, he already had like a fairly solid understanding of what I was asking. But then the first time I actually took the headstall off, I did it in the round yard, and then went from the round yard to the fenced arena. And then as time went on, he got to the stage where, you know, I could sort of ride him out in open arena or ride paddock. Not that I ride him up the paddock much, because he's a little bit of a fruitcake, I guess. Everyone says to me, they're like, oh, you know, he must be so quiet because you ride him bridleless. And I was like, he's actually not. Like, he's actually a bit of an idiot. Like, he's not sensible at all. The stupid scare the crap out of him.
You're like the pigeons. The pigeons scare him all the time.
the ghost over in the bush over there, he's petrified of that. Yeah, but I think I just know him so well because I've had him for so long now that there's some days I've gone out and you can just tell in the paddock, he's been so stupid that I was like, no, I'm not even going to try and work with him today. I'll just leave him till tomorrow when he has a better day. Yeah, and I think that's just one thing to keep in mind too, is that horses aren't robots like us. You know, they have their good days, they have their bad days. And I'm learning now with Rocco to actually respect that instead of having that mentality of you're my horse, you've got to do as I say.
Yeah, no, it's I love that. And that brings us a lot to like how our thoughts and our energy, impacts our horses.
Yeah. And I think I was telling you earlier, actually, I was teaching a clinic near home a few weeks ago. And I said to the lady, I was like, okay, so what we're going to do when we get around this other side of the circle is actually ask the horse to come back to a halt. And then as soon as I said that, a few steps later, the horse halted. And she goes, oh, I didn't really want that, but I was already thinking that. And she went, how funny is that? Like, I just thought it. And he stopped. And yeah, I thought, like now that I've been on this journey with Rocco before, I would have thought, wow, that's so weird. It's like the horse is reading your mind. But, they actually do. They can feel what we're feeling and feel when we're anxious and feel when we're ready. Like when someone, I have heard before people have said to me, like, I've gone to sell my horse and I was just thinking like this horse has never bucked, but the day someone comes to look at it, and I think, okay, today you don't buck, and that's the one day the horse barks. And it's because you're actually projecting that thought onto the horse. So our thoughts are a lot stronger than what I think a lot of people, and me before I went on this journey with Rocco, actually, you don't realize how much your thoughts actually affect your animals that you work with.
Absolutely. So like when you were a kid, when did you first start to really notice that your energy and your thoughts were impacting your horse?
It's probably only been the last few years, actually. Like if you had have mentioned anything like that to me before a few years ago, I would have been like, oh, they're nuts. Like, they're completely woo. Yeah, I actually went, there's a good friend of mine, Sinead McCann. I met her. I don't know how I ended up there because, I used to think, animal communication, all that sort of stuff, what a load of crap. But I ended up at this animal communication clinic, and I'm not sure how I ended up there, to be honest, but I ended up there. And I met this lady there called Sinead, and she's actually become a really good friend of mine since. And I took Rocco with me, and they sent us out to see what we can pick up off the horse. And Sinead come back with this massive big sheet of paper. And she's like, I just went over and, had a chat to Rocco. And I was like, oh yeah, righto. And she comes back and she goes, do you call it a rat bag? And I thought, like, I didn't know Sinead at that point in time from a bar of soap. And I call Rocco a rat bag, or did, all the time. And she goes, you've got to stop. He really hates it. And then the next thing she said to me is he also thinks you should start wearing a dress and dress a bit more girly, like at least on some occasions. And now I'm thinking, wow, like, man, this is weird because I never dress up either. But there is no way, like, that lady could work those things out. So that was really cool. That was kind of my first experience with it. And that's when I started thinking, maybe this is a real thing. And then from then just started reading more books. And I guess because like attracts like, then you attract more of those sort of people into your life. And I started learning more about it. And I think the other thing, like, I always kind of thought it was just you, like, communication was you sitting there talking to your animal. But I've since learned, it's more about your intuition and actually trusting that what you get is right. And I guess it's not only animal communication, it's, anything. You get bad feelings about things and then they turn out to be right. And it's just actually trusting that and then learning yourself, I guess, to practice it more. But the last few years has been a real roller coaster for me. I would never have meditated or done anything like that a few years ago, and started doing more of that sort of stuff and being a bit more open-minded, I guess, and you can actually see the changes and results in the horses.
Oh, that's beautiful. I really appreciate you sharing that with us. I was just going to say, what kind of response did you see? Any shifts in your horses when your mindset started to shift and how you engage with them? Like, did they soften? Did they do different things?
Yeah, they do. Like, they actually, and it's like they sort of start to work with you more because you're no longer going, you haven't got that mentality of, this is my horse, I'm the boss, they're going to do as I say. It's being a little bit more mindful of, okay, and then I think the classical dressage comes in there too. When a horse says no, maybe there's other reasons other than they just don't want to do it, like maybe this is hurting or that's hurting or they're having a bad day, or like there can be so many things. And it's opened my mind up to those possibilities instead of just thinking, my horse has been a little shit today. Like, yeah, so it's changed that side of things a lot.
Thank you so much for sharing that. Yeah, and speaking of the classical dressage as a form of rehabilitation for the horses, are there
Yeah.
different ways that you assess a horse that you're training to see if there's a particular type of exercise within classical dressage that would be most appropriate for them?
Yeah. I think, that's kind of a matter of, seeing the horse. And then, so I always start with like just trying to identify like, or the people I'm working with or myself, that spinal alignment we talked about earlier, trying to make sure all those vertebrae are following themselves around the movement they're doing. So I just start, fairly simple with that on a circle and then into straight lines. And the horse will tell you if they can start doing more or if that's all they need for a little while. I work with that with lunging as well. And then when they're telling you that they can do more or starting to build the muscles and get stronger, then start bringing in more of your lateral movements, like your shoulder in. And I guess the movements are kind of like you going, I don't know, and doing yoga or going to the gym and doing stretches. All the different laterals are like doing different stretches.
That's fun. So like with that, do you ever make recommendations to the riders and say, I'm noticing that when you ride in this particular way and your horse is struggling in this way? And then recommend that they do something differently, either on top of the horse or exercise and stretches at a different time.
Yeah. And I think that comes back to too how like our horses, we're either right or left-handed, and our horses are either right or left-handed. And a lot of the time it is, like they'll have they're a bit sticky on the left or sticky on the right, or have this back leg that doesn't work as well, or that front leg. But we're the same on them. So it's just recognizing, okay, I've got a bit of a dicky right shoulder. And realizing my dicky right shoulder being like this all the time puts my whole body off, and then that affects my horse too. I think just having that awareness there that you're doing that, and then when the awareness is there, you can start trying to fix it. It's not really a matter, I guess, of just saying, hey, your right shoulder's like this, and it just fixing like that. It's a thing over time that you've just got to work on, and the same with the horse.
Absolutely.
But, listening to them.
How do you help people who are stuck in regards to their mindset and how they're working with their horses?
Yeah, I think my biggest thing is just telling people, and I'm guilty of it too, stop overthinking. Like everyone kind of gets in that and they do, oh, okay, so this is going wrong. And then you think up like a million reasons of how you can fix it or how you're affecting it or this or that, instead of thinking, okay, if I do this one thing, it's just made it feel better. It's sort of thinking less, but then trusting yourself more.
Yeah, I feel like that's probably true across the board, not just with horses.
Yeah.
It's just learning how to trust your intuition.
Yeah.
And differentiating between what a trigger is, something that you're fearful of, that you're reminded of. So for instance, like a fall, versus trusting your intuition. Be like, is this something that's actually going to be dangerous for me? Like, am I safe right now? It's like getting back on a horse after a bad fall. It can be really scary. And I like definitely speak from experience on that, having had 2 low back surgeries, one of which was originally from like flying off of a horse. Getting back up there can be really, it can be scary. And also, as we have to like rehab our own bodies, navigating how we support our horses, right? Because if we are imbalanced and we're working through our own imbalances, how do we support our horses as they support us, right? And you need to take that time, be like, okay, if I know I'm riding in an imbalanced fashion, what do I need to do to exercise my horse in a different way, or give them body work like massage or stretching or acupuncture or chiropractic or whatever, what frequency, to help them stay balanced while you're
Yeah.
in place.
Yeah. And I think, there's more than one way to skin a cat, as they say. Like there's so many different, modalities and things out there now that can help. And yeah.
And just giving yourself some grace and saying, like, I know that I'm imbalanced and I'm going to work on myself. And that doesn't mean that I don't need to ride, but that does mean that I need to ride more conscientiously and work my horse to compensate with that in a more mindful fashion.
Yeah. No, that's exactly it. Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting too, because if your horse is off, like trying to not let yourself become imbalanced.
Yeah.
Right? Because it's like it goes both ways. And
Yeah.
having to, like, if you're riding a horse that's not balanced and you're trying to stay balanced and supporting them in that you might need to go get more body work.
And I think with trusting yourself too, like I've had a few people say to me now, I just feel like, I'm not good enough for my horse, or I feel like their potential's wasting with me. And I always say, like, your horse doesn't give a shit about their potential, like they don't care if they're out there, or most of them anyway, winning ribbons or doing that. They'd rather be with you and being loved. And I think that's something to,
Yeah, no, that definitely hits me. But so I sold my dream horse to one of my trainers who loves her dearly and gives her a great life for that
Yeah.
exact reason, because I felt like she had so much potential. She had like, oh my gosh, just her grandsires on both sides were just legendary. Like her bloodlines were spectacular, and she had so much potential. And yeah, I just, when my trainer fell in love with her, as much as I miss her still, I just, knowing that she's in a good place and being able to be trained to the level that she can perform at in an ethical way. Because that's the important piece, right? Because not all horses are trained to high level in a way that's respectful of the horse. But she she is. So yeah, maybe someday we'll get to see her out there as a silver medalist. or a gold, who knows, out there in the Olympics someday. But yeah, so I have a lot of compassion for people like myself that sell the horses that they love to good homes because you want what's best for your horse.
One does.
Yeah, so it's an interesting sort of journey. Whenever I sell my horses, I always make sure that they go to a home that can give them more than I was able to, which is a really high bar because I'm a massage therapist for people and horses, and I'm all about like best things for my horse in a balanced way. So they're extra special homes, but so many things. Is there something that you had to bravely come across in your own journey to confront to be able to live the kind of life that you live today with your horse, making it a living?
Probably the biggest thing, how we were talking before about, me starting to actually open up to the idea that energy is a real thing, and there is the potential for animal communication, listening to intuition. That was a big thing for me because I didn't believe in it for such a long time, and I thought that if I told the people around me, they'd think I was nuts. So for a very long time, I would always tell my dad, my mom, the rest of my family. I was always at biomechanics horse clinics, and they'd be like, "Wow, she goes to all the biomechanics horse clinics." Even when I was doing something else, like I've done a regular course in animal communication and some psychic development things, and I'm always like, "Oh, Dad, I'm going to a biomechanics clinic," and it actually worked really well because he'd always go, like, he'd be happy that I was doing something I wanted to do, but he'd never ask any more questions because the word biomechanics and horses sounds so bloody boring to him. He's like, "Oh yeah, and it's only been probably, like I'd probably say in the last year that I've actually started telling people. There's still a lot of people that don't know. I guess if they watch this, they're about to find out. But I feel that a lot of people still aren't really open to that idea. And it's, I guess, just expressing that like being yourself instead of trying to hide things all the time. That's been the hardest thing for me, actually opening up and telling people that, hey, you know, I do believe this. And when I first told Dad, I was expecting him and my mum and everyone to be like, wow, you know, that's weird. No, like, oh yeah, that's cool. And Dad's actually probably in the last year become, you know, or the last couple of years, I'm like, wow, you're actually like a bit of a hippie, dude. Yeah. So
Oh,
that's probably
that's so
the
funny.
biggest challenge, I think, for me.
Well, that's very admirable for you to share that with us this evening, and that you were open and continued your journey with a space of neutral curiosity to say, like, maybe there is something here, and to see.
Yeah.
That's lovely. Was there anything else that that's burning in you that you would love to share with the audience in regards to classical dressage or anything else?
I guess just not to give up, you know, like things always get tough and get hard, and sometimes you feel like, you know, you just can't get through it. But if you just keep chipping away, and found that eventually, you know, you get through things, or you like get over learning, like if you're having a difficulty with something with your horse, say a particular movement, or even just, you know, you have trouble catching a horse or something, like if you just keep trying and keep patience and keep chipping away at it, that eventually, you know, you'll get there.
Oh, that's beautiful. Thank you so much for that. Because you have your phrase that many other people have heard in other areas of life, which is the give in, give up, or give it all you got.
Yeah, and that actually come from one of my students, and she's actually become a really good friend of mine too, Henrietta. I think I stole it off one of her posts one day, because she posts so many inspirational quotes, and I was like, oh, I really like that one, and it kind of just stuck.
No, that's great. It is really helpful because
Yeah.
it's applicable to so many things in life.
Yeah.
Speaking of inspiration, who inspires you in the world today?
I remember you saying you can ask that. So that's a hard one. I don't think there's not really any one person in particular. It's, you know, it's everyone. I think everyone has something to offer. You know, whether it's my family, like, you know, my mom, my dad, they're all inspiring. My aunties, my uncles, but even just everyday people I meet, I think you get something from everyone if you're open to it. I think everyone has something to give and something to teach. Every situation, even if it's teaching you what not to do. It's still-
No, that's a beautiful sentiment, one that I absolutely agree with.
Yeah.
So Tori, if anybody wants to connect with you to ask you more questions about the classical dressage and equine rehabilitation, or writing Bitless, Bridleless, or animal communication, or anything like that, and how thoughts and energy impacts people on horses, where can they find you?
Yeah, so it's just probably on my website or my Facebook page. It's www.bitlesswithEveryBitOfControl.com.au. And then the Facebook one is Bitless with Every Bit of Control, and then it just says Tori Jeffress after it.
Fantastic. And we'll make sure to put that in the details of the interview later and in the comments in the group. So thank you so much, Tori.
Thank you so much too.
You're very welcome. I hope that people are watching in the future enjoy the interview that we've done this evening. And as always, if you're interested in connecting with me for empowerment coaching with or without horses, or to be on the show, you can find me at www.globalequineaffiliates.com and on Instagram at Elysia Buss. And of course, watching on the YouTube channel, which you may or may not have found this on yet, Horsepower Empowerment Through Connection, or check out my other fun one is Global Resources for Men. You can also find us on my other Facebook page for the women support. We have support calls twice a month on Tuesdays on Phoenix Rising Women's Group, and for the gentlemen, we have it on Wednesdays for Global Resources for Men on Facebook. So lots of ways where we can help connect, empower, and support one another all around the world as we vulnerably share our stories without shame and get to learn new things sometimes. And of course, have a little fun. So thanks again for watching, and until next time, we'll see you later.
Bye.
Bye.